Hello and welcome to episode 152 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
I'm Sahil.
and it was kind of a wonky week. We've got a wonky kind of upside down start to the season. There are two undefeated teams now remaining, and they are Andrew and Anthony, as we all expected.
Absolutely. Yeah, we expected that. And they play each other next week, so
Ooh,
only one of them is going to come out undefeated, most likely,
yeah, unless they tie.
unless they tie. Oh God, um, that would be insane.
And but yeah, a lot of good matchups this week to talk about. They both obviously came away with wins. But there's some trades to mention too before we get into that.
Yeah, three trades. Few interesting ones here. Why don't we just go in order of how they happened? I traded MJ Melendez and Zahir Hope to Alex for Gavin Williams. I'll start with you, Cam. Your thoughts?
Hey, it's just the same thoughts every time. Like um you picked up Zahir Hope 48 hours and 20 minutes before you traded him. Like what's going on? How does that happen?
He's a good prospect. He's getting a lot of hype right now. I think he's a good ad for Alex.
If you thought he was a good ad for Alex, he would have been a good ad for yourself.
Well, it was a good ad for myself. That's why I added him in the first place.
I don't know, or I don't know, or he would have added him himself if I don't know.
Okay, fair, but still,
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. MJ Melendez has had a hot start to the season. How to end the last season. He's an interesting bat, and I know once you start chatting up, talking up one of your bats, I almost put a hot take that he was going to be gone very soon, but I was not expecting it to be this soon that you traded him away.
yeah. It just kind of worked out. And it's interesting because I'd offered Melendez to Alex last week, and Alex did not seem particularly interested. And then I kind of started talking about Melendez a bit, and he was like, "Hey, how about Melendez?" And I was like, I was a little hesitant to deal him at first because he also wanted Castellanos in a deal. And then what ended up happening was I he tried to add Zahir Hope. I told him I had added him a couple days before, and then I texted him right after that. I was like, "What about Melendez and Hope for Williams?" And it just kind of worked out. He said he was kind of surprised that more people didn't really make an offer for Williams, and it worked out. But I think this is, despite all the belly aching that you're doing, I think it's a solid trade for both sides. I mean, Melendez is only 25. I think the full-time switch to the outfield really helped him. He's really bad behind the plate. He had that like 47 home run year in the minors. So he definitely has that power upside. Uh, he started hitting really well in the second half last year. All the batted ball metrics kind of supported the breakout. The breakouts continued this year. He's batting in the middle of what I think is a sneaky good Royals lineup. He was not somebody I was excited to trade away, but at the same time, I thought it was a good time to capitalize on his value. Gavin Williams really liked the upside. I thought he was pretty impressive in what he showed in the majors last year. There's definitely some work to be done. The walk rate was high last year, but from a pure talent perspective, I really think he has an upside to be even better than the Tanner Bibees and the Shane Biebers that have been kind of atop this Guardians rotation over the past year. That being said, I mean, there is still risk. He is still a young pitching prospect, and he is dealing with a bit of an elbow injury right now. Nothing structural. He is on his way back, but I needed pitching. I thought he was a kind of a solid addition to my squad, and we'll see what happens with him. I'm excited for him to hopefully debut here shortly. So and Zahir Hope's been rising up. I totally believe he's going to be a top 100 prospect in the next round of whatever fantasy or real life prospect rankings come out. He is doing really well, and he's in a Dodgers system that a lot of people seem to trust. So
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I can't say I'd heard of him going into this. It's been a while since Clegg has put out a list. I don't know. I'm not really sold on Zahir Hope. I don't know a lot about him, but it's just, I mean, you pick up a guy and you trade him 2 days later. Come on.
The only thing I know about Hope is that like 4 or 5 like people were hyping him up, so I picked him up. That's all I know about him. I can't tell you a single other thing about him other than he also plays for the Dodgers and he's an outfielder.
Oh, I don't know why I thought he was a pitcher, but
No, no, no. He's a hitter.
all right. What was the second trade that was made?
Yeah, so later that evening, Andrew traded my 2026 second to EBO for Luis Rengifo. Um, Andrew's been dealing with some injuries. Rengifo's kind of a young utility guy, second, third, short, and outfield eligible. Um, it's got a 323 average on the year, but hasn't really done much else. I think he's a solid ad for Andrew, kind of given some of the injuries that he's been dealing with. I wonder if maybe he could have just found someone on the waiver wire to fill in without giving up the pick, but like I think it's fine value.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I don't really care too much about it. Either way. Yeah, I think the value is kind of in line.
Yeah, good for EBO to kind of start getting rid of some of their bat surplus.
Yeah, it is just kind of silly seeing them trade for yet another pick.
It is, but also like, what else are they gonna do with some of the like ridiculous amount of bench bats that they have? Like at some point, it's like it, you got to trade it for something, and rather it be a pick, which doesn't count as a roster space or anything. But I'm sure they have a plan for those picks, or I hope so at least. But speaking of that bat surplus, they did make a trade like literally a half hour before we went on air. Um, they traded Von Grissom to Daniel and Matt for Carson Wisenhut. I talked to Daniel and Matt briefly after the trade, and Daniel said he logged on to Slack and just saw this trade in there, and he said he had to jump on it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Von Grissom person. I don't think you are either. And Wizenhunt, I mean, he had a fantastic start to last season. Wasn't quite as good in Double A as he was in the lower minors, but still solid. The walk rate, um, he's walked 6 guys in 8 innings in 3 starts this year and hasn't been great. But so maybe they're a little worried about him. And I don't believe his spring training was the best either. But I think Carson Wizenhut's an interesting prospect, and I kind of like the deal a little better for EBO.
I'm the opposite here. I like this better for Daniel and Matt. I think the problem with Von Grisham has always been the defense. That's what prevented him from getting playing time in Atlanta. I do know he struggled with the bat a bit in his first stint in Atlanta, but I think there's some talent there. Um, Hunt for all of the reasons that you outlined. Like I do think he's a solid prospect, but I think there's also room to be skeptical. And if I have to choose between the young major league hitter who is probably going to receive just about everyday playing time once he's healthy versus the pitching prospect who hasn't debuted, give me the hitter. I will also add as a little tidbit, Andrew Bailey is gone from the Giants. And I know the Giants do that weird thing with some of their starters where they're like, hey, you're just going to go 3 innings and piggyback. And it's not really a team whose pitchers I love to deal with unless it's like a Logan Webb or I'm not even going to say Blake Snell, but like a Logan Webb where they're so established that like, they're just going to use them like a traditional starter. So give me the Daniel and Matt side of this.
Interesting. I think it just kind of comes down to different opinions on Von Grissom.
Yeah, that being said, I do think it's like relatively even value, but give me the hitter over the pitcher. I don't think the values are all too different.
Yeah. But those were the trades. Shall we get into the matchup portion of this episode?
One quick thing I'll add. I didn't mention it in my trade. I did to make room in my IL for Gavin Williams. Cut Julio Urias finally. Good riddance.
Hey.
Yeah, he I think got charged with 5 felonies this week, or maybe they were felonies, maybe it was something else. I don't know, but yeah, he's not pitching again in the majors. So, uh,
Yeah, it's about time.
yeah, I was only keeping him because he was IL eligible, but no, I knew he'd be the first cut the second I needed the spot. So, good riddance. You're an asshole. Let's move on.
Good riddance. Now you, me, and Eric have all cut big contributors from our team who were assholes.
Yes, we have.
All right. But yes, moving on to the matchups. There's a lot of places we can go first with this. I think yours was just kind of the wildest. So want to start with your matchup against Eric?
Yeah, I chatted Erik a couple days ago. I was like, this feels like a playoff matchup. Like I'm 90% sure, and I haven't gone back and checked for sure, but Erik, I think, would have beaten every other team in the league this week. So Erik, uh this might have been the single best offensive week between two teams in league history. If not number one, I'd certainly put it up there, like top three, top five. Erik and I both set our home run records this week, our single week home run records. I can't imagine there's another week in league history beyond like the first couple weeks of the first year, for obvious reasons, that two teams have like set the same um, single week record in the same matchup. And Erik's home run total this week of 27 actually ties the league record set by, and you would never guess who said it, the Bellies did back in 2019 against Erik. So
Really?
yeah, that one's insane to me.
That's
Um,
kind of a shocker.
yeah, I'd like to go back and look at that matchup at some point, see how that one broke out. But Erik also broke his RBI record. He had 72 RBIs. Um, his previous high was 69, which he also set against me in 2019. Um, Actually, that might have been the week before the Bellies that set the home run record against him. But I set my OBP record. My OBP record was previously 403.6 set in 2019. It is now 407. I don't know the other decimal points. I don't have it open, but that is four of the 12 offensive records were franchise or league records this week in that matchup. Now, despite Erik setting two franchise records, he only won one other category, lost 9-3. And that's because I very much outpitched him this week. I had 7 quality starts at his 5, 3 saves and 2 holds. He got a single hold on Sunday, but that was too little too late. 276 ERA for me, 101 whip. He did have a full 12 starters. I only used 10, so he did edge me in strikeouts 92-80, but otherwise I swept the pitching categories. On the hitting side, I had 65 runs to his 58, 25 doubles to his 18, 10 steals to his 7, and a 407 OVP to his 371. I mean, all great numbers for him, but just not enough because my team dominated there. Although he did beat me in homers and ribbies, 27 and 72, just absolutely insane. And by 23 and 67 would have demolished anybody else this week, but not quite.
You know, he had some absurd hitting performances. Marcell Ozuna drove in 11 runs. Ellie had a great week. William Contreras, uh, Shohei had a great week. Michael Bush looked really great. His team could hit. I just couldn't kind of get it done on the pitching side. George Kirby is really having a tough start to the season.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I thought he'd be like the pillar of consistency for that rotation, but like he had a good opening start against Boston, but has really struggled since. Bad starts at Cleveland and then at Toronto. And honestly, I was a little surprised this week for Erik because he had 12 starts, but it was like Corbin Burns has 2 starts and Cole Reagans has 2 starts, and like all of his top pitchers like were just like pitching multiple times, and he's only able to piece together 5 quality starts.
Man, yeah, no, it was tough there. Yeah, you had seven, which is insane. Let's talk about your team though. You had seven quality starts from seven different pitchers. Great week for Nestor Cortez, great week for Zach Gallen. Um, good start for Chris Sanchez. Kenta Maeda made a good start. Kevin Ginkel got you three saves. Maybe he'll be on my team by the time this episode comes up. Um, we'll see about that. But really, the star was your hitting. Just like Eric's. I mean, you're God, you had an insanely good hitting week, 67 ribbies, and you still lost ribbies. Um, Tatis was solid. Mookie Betts was solid. Colton Cowser. I mean, I have someone else in mind for matchup MVP, but if you want to overrule me and say Colton Cowser, feel free.
I
Um,
Hauser, the only thing I feel bad about Hauser is so the first two Boston games when he was tearing it up, he was still sitting in my farm system, and then I finally called him up because it was a day off for some teams that Thursday, and I had space in my lineup, fully intending to demote him after that because I only wanted to go with two bench bats, but he was just so good that I was like, I cannot demote him, and he rewarded me in that Milwaukee series. I mean. Is this safe to say he's a top 100 dynasty asset? Would you
I
say?
think it's way too early to say that. He had a
Interesting.
great week though.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
I'd encourage you to look at his Statcast page. It's bonkers. But
but
who did you have in mind then?
I have not Altuve, although Altuve was great. I have Alonso in mind. Just the 556 on base is absurd. He had four homers. He led your team with 8 runs and with seven ribbies also.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue that. I'm fine with you giving it to him. If Cowser had played the full week in my lineup, he would have been the easy choice. But I know some of these numbers in the summary don't reflect some of the guys that I benched at different points. But yeah, Alonso, nice to see him heat up. I know he had a little bit of a slow start to the year, but he's awesome.
Yeah, Alonso has now tied Matt Olson for fifth most matchup MVPs with 5,
Ooh, that is fun.
breaking a tie with Dylan Cease, Austin Riley, Dolis Garcia, Mookie Betts, and Rafael Devers.
Damn. All right, that is fun. Let's talk a little kind of big picture here, unless there's anything else you want to talk about, any of these specific players.
No, I kind of want to see how we're feeling about these teams.
Yeah, okay. So I kind of had a slow start to the season, right? Lost to Anthony, lost to Alex, or tie to Alex, which I feel like we very much treated like a loss in the podcast, but which it did feel that way. But the pitching was the big concern those first 2 weeks, right? My team was hitting. I think I won like 10 of the 12 hitting categories between those two matchups. And all of a sudden, the pitching was there this week. 7 quality starts, 3 saves, 2 holds, great ERA, great whip, 80 strikeouts. How are you feeling about my team?
I think you're gonna be fine. It's a 1-1-1 start. If you had lost here, you would have really dug yourself a hole, but I think you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be fine too. I think some of the pitching really got back on track. As these guys are kind of making their third or fourth start. I know like Nola and Freed all look better than their first two starts, and I know that was kind of a big culprit. I'm getting. I think Braxton Garrett's next start will be in the majors. Kyle Bradish is starting a rehab assignment, very surprisingly early, and then obviously getting Gavin Williams. So I feel pretty good about my team after the slow start. And yeah, let's turn over to Eric's team. Eric's now 1-2. He has a week 1 loss to Ruthvik. He beat Yuki last week 7-5. Where he played decent, but I don't think he necessarily wowed anybody with his performance. A 7-5 win. And then he has the loss to me this week where he smoked the shit out of the ball, but his pitching was underwhelming. How are you feeling about Eric's team right now?
So I think we'll be able to kind of copy paste what I say about Eric's team when we talk about my team later. I think we both had the exact same start to the season. Um, Look, I think his numbers were promising this week. It's just he just kind of ran into you having an insanely good week. I'm never going to be worried about a team that drives in 72 runs in a week, and hits 27 homers. Um, his first 2 weeks weren't amazing, but I think his team's gonna be back in the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. Now, whether he's if we're looking at him more as a 5 or 6 as opposed to a one or to like a 3 or 4 where he's been, that's maybe something possible because maybe we kind of have to start looking at Andrew as being the third team, and then me and Erik kind of fighting for fourth instead of fighting for third. And who knows where Ruthvik fits in there. I don't know. I think it's looking more and more likely that we're going to have the same 6 playoff teams as last year. Uh, unless Anthony sneaks in. I I think I feel fine with Erik's team right now. I think it's early in the season. I'm not panicking.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not panicking either. I think he would have beat every team in the league but mine this week. Just kind of unlucky here, but like I think overall he's going to be fine. But I'm if I was him, I'd certainly be frustrated by kind of running into a buzzsaw this week. But um, anything else you want to add here? We did talk about this matchup for a while, or are you ready to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, cool. Which one do you want to talk about next?
I just kind of teased how I'm feeling about my team. Do you want to talk about that matchup?
Yeah, let's go into that. You and I tend to do this thing where I'll just kind of chat you my unfiltered thoughts, especially about your matchup. And it was another one of those weeks where I was really intrigued by your matchup to the point where I was really focused on it all day today. And you went from like 3-8 to 1 to like 5-7 to 7-5, back to 5-7 to like 6-6. Like they're like all over the place. He finally settled, kind of losing here 3-8 to 1. A lot of it kind of came down to your pitching decisions today, which I'll let you kind of talk about. But um, a really interesting week how this played out. I don't think neither you nor Jake pitched particularly well. Both of you kind of racked up um, some bullpen stats here, some saves and holds. You were able to get 4 quality starts, but like 4.24 ERA for him, 4.66 for you, 132 whip for him, 140 whip for you. Neither were particularly impressive. I thought offensively, both of you did better. It was a little weird seeing Jake with 36 RBIs and 61 runs. He had 12 home runs to get those 36 RBIs. It's just like a weird split. 9 steals, mainly on the back of Acuna, and 373 OBP were solid. You had 54 ribbies, solid there, kind of solid across the board offensively otherwise, but just not enough to beat Jake. And I'm going to step out of the way here and let you talk about your matchup now.
Yeah, so I guess for starters, I feel happy that my team was able to keep it close all week, really right down to the end. I led briefly on Sunday. It was kind of 7-5 at the end of most days. Um, so I'm glad I kept it close. On the other hand, this is literally the least close matchup I've ever had with Jake. Um, every single matchup has been 6-5 to 1 or 7-5, and I guess our finals was 7-4-1. But every matchup has been insanely close, and this one, felt close the whole way. He flipped on base percentage on the last day, and um, he flipped ERA and whip back from me at the end, and he flipped homers on the last day. So it was within my grasp. I just couldn't quite get there. Am, you know, I really don't feel good about my bullpen, and I did get 4 holds and 3 saves, but I also had Joe Jimenez on my roster for 4 days trying to get a hold, and finally the fourth day he comes in and pitches well, but um in a game he came in when they were losing, so he didn't get a hold there. Um, Jose Leclerc sucks. I guess I streamed a hold from Colin Poche, which is nice. And Clay Holmes was good, but I need a second really good closer, I think. And my starting pitching. I mean, Darvish didn't have a great start tonight. Not that I was expecting him to. Um, Wheeler had one great start and one not so great start. Charlie Morton had one great start and one not so great start. Um, Mitch Keller. So I think we got to talk about how this went down. So going into today, it was 7-5. Jake led both ERA and WHIP. We each had four starters going today. I decided to sit. I decided to start Wheeler and Morton, sit Mitch Keller, and wait and see on Darvish. And Mitch Keller pitched a gem against the Phillies, and Wheeler and Morton kind of got roughed around a little bit, and it's just kind of how it happens. I would have, I definitely would have won WHIP if I had Keller in, um, but it's a bummer. It yeah would have been smart in retrospect to put him in. On the other hand, I wasn't expecting Wheeler to pitch badly against a not great team and Morton to pitch badly against an even worse team. Um, so that's just kind of the way it goes. And I guess I am encouraged in general that just for the future of my team that Keller had a good start, even if it wasn't in my lineup, and he had a good start earlier in the week against the Tigers also. So there's some encouraging signs. I like the way I hit this week. I drove in 54 runs. I hit 17 doubles. I had a good on base, although not as good as Jake's. I like the way Nimmo played. I like the way Jeff McNeil played. I mean, he had a 619 on base percentage when he was in my lineup this week. Drove in 4 runs. Juan Soto is kind of gonna carry my team this year. I feel like I'll go where he goes. Yeah, so that's my team, and we'll talk about Jake in a second. But what's your kind of read on what I just said?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the Sunday pitching decision first. I think you made the right call, right? I think Mitch Keller's been a little inconsistent, and even last year when he was kind of like pitched well overall on the season at the end of the year, he did have an elevated WHIP. You were looking to win WHIP. That Phillies lineup has a lot of good hitters. Morton was going against Miami. I know they roughed up Sale the day before, but they've been pretty awful. Zach Wheeler's an auto start no matter who he's pitching against. Like you couldn't have predicted he would shit the bed. If Wheeler just made a normal start for him, like you probably win ERA and WHIP. So it's one of those things where the process was right, but the result just didn't work out. And hey, if the result always worked out the way we expected it, this would be a very boring game that we play. So I don't fault you for that. I think with respect to your team, I think, like you said, you can copy and paste what we said about Erik. I think you are going to be fine. You do have some pitchers that are going to kind of come off the aisle here. Framber
Yeah, I'm
Valdez,
gonna have too many starters very soon.
you will. I mean, Framber Valdez got good news today, right? They don't think he's going to need a rehab assignment. Jordan Montgomery's next start is going to be in the majors. Um, I know Bueller kind of got hit by a comebacker. Erod had a little bit of a setback, but you still have, Wheeler pitching well, right? Mitch Keller, Sonny Gray's back now. Darvish, who I am admittedly a little concerned about, but I don't know why he's not going super deep into games or getting that pitch count up high, but that's for another discussion. Um, and then offensively, I like your bats, like, and some of them are really starting to heat up. So I don't really have concerns
Like
there.
Jeff McNeil is.
Um, and your Soroster and Chris Bryant. But yeah, I think your team's going to be fine. Now, do I think you're going to get a bye? I don't think so. Do I think you're going to be kind of competing for that 3 to 5 seed with the likes of Erik and Andrew? Absolutely. So I think that's kind of you're in that second tier with them. I think there is kind of a separation between a top tier and a second tier. Um, but I do want to talk about Jake's team. And one stat that's kind of surprising to me, right? We talked about the Spencer Strider trade, and how awesome his rotation looked after that, right? Starting with Strider, he's Kevin Gausman, Luis Castillo, Blake Snell. He really liked this trio of Red Sox starters that he's owned or owns, right? Nathan Eovaldi. Uh, After all of that, Jake this week used 12 starts, had exactly one quality start. Jake on the season has 4 quality starts through 3 weeks. He's now 2-1. He does have a big loss to Andrew last week, but he does now have wins over Daniel and Matt and you. Do you have any concerns about this team? I will also add one more thing. Acuna has not played particularly well yet either. He did steal 6 bases this week, which was very nice, and that pretty much single-handedly flipped steals. But he hasn't really been hitting for power or doing much else. Your thoughts on Jake's team?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be fine. He is 2-1 now. I am a little worried about the rotation. Blake Snell has looked bad to start the year. Gausman, I'm a little concerned about Gausman also. Um, you know, it's it's tough. Pitchers are so fickle, and they're always hurt, all of them. Every last one of them. So it's hard to know when you're building a rotation if that's going to be a rotation next year. I mean, I know I'm my whole pitching lineup one day last week was all guys who are brand new on my team. Uh, and Jake has some big names. He's got Castillo, he's got Gausman, he's got Strider, but he's got Snell. But if these guys aren't it doesn't take a lot for a great rotation to suddenly look vulnerable. And he did pitch better than I did this week, outside of the quality starts. And Brian Bayo looked really good, although he got paddocked twice this week. And Ryan Weathers made a decent start, so maybe he's something there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried. I mean, I just lost to this team. So I can't say that I'm worried about this team when I'm not quite as worried about my team.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I discussed it after he made the Strider and Acuna trades. I was like, look, there could easily be a scenario where one of these players goes down in April or he loses a series of players, right? Like, he traded away a lot of depth. And then it kind of becomes, well, how do you backfill that depth? I think at the time his team was relatively healthy, and now you're starting to see some of the cracks with the injuries. I think he's done a pretty good job of backfilling some of that depth. Um, you know, it, Getting these trio of Red Sox starters, I think, certainly helps. Um, but I do think kind of at the top of the rotation, I mean, I do have concerns. I think something's wrong with Gosman to me. I know he was dealing with the shoulder strain in spring training. He looked a little better in this last start if you kind of go under the hood, but I don't know if he needs more time just to kind of work out some of the kinks. Like he didn't get a full spring training, but he just doesn't look great, and he is kind of getting up there now at 33, where not that I think he's breaking down or anything, but you kind of want to start thinking about succession plans a little bit. I think Snell might be more of, hey, he lacked a full spring training, and I think Jake's just gonna kind of have to take some lumps there. I don't think Snell's gonna repeat at what he did last year, but I think he's probably gonna be fine. Castillo looked a lot better today, and I don't really have concerns with him. I think that's kind of the key piece here, though, that's kind of holding together the rotation. Because if you take Castillo away from this rotation, uh, it starts to look really bad really quick. Um, I will say these Red Sox starters, as good as they're kind of doing to help Jake's ratios, I would like to see them get deeper into games. They all pitched relatively well this week, but like Bayo's gone 5-5, 5 1/3, 5 1/3. Cutter Crawford's gone 6, 4 2/3, 5. Garrett Whitlock's gone 5, 4 1/3, 5. So like if they're not going deep on a consistent basis and he's not getting those quality starts, that's certainly not going to help this team. Um, On the hitting side, I think he's doing fine. I'm not really concerned there, but yeah, I think Jake's going to be fine overall, but I wouldn't be surprised if he, makes a trade for a starting pitcher or two here to kind of shore up some of the depth. And I will say, if Gosman and Snell kind of don't bounce back here, that's when like we're starting to look, towards the mid end of May, and they're both struggling, or maybe Gosman's landed on the IL. That's when I start to be like, okay, like something needs to change, but I'm not really worried about it now. And a 2-1 after a big win over I think he's fine, but definitely something to keep an eye out for. Um, yeah.
All right. But yeah, so those were the first two matchups. Top four teams all playing each other. Always exciting. Let's talk about, I guess, the one. Uh, I did not pick matchup MVP. I think I'm going to give it to Jordan though, because he had a 548 on base percentage. I'm tempted to give it to Acuna because he had the steals and he had the on base, but he did only drive in one run. So I don't. I think Alvarez contributed across more categories than Acuna did.
Yeah, I'll add one last thing here because I kind of mentioned it in the beginning of the discussion of Jake's team, but we never really hit on it. I know Acuna kind of dealt with the meniscus injury at the end of the spring, and he hasn't really been driving the ball much. I don't know if he even has a barrel still. I think that was a big thing earlier in the week. Any concerns with him or just a slow start?
I think it's just a slow start. I mean, that's kind of the risk of trading so much for one guy is that if he has a slow start, it starts to kind of wear on your team more. But I'm not worried. I think he's fine.
That's fair. You know who has had a really good start?
Who's that?
Kyle Tucker.
Kyle Tucker has had a really good start. If only Ruthvik kept him, he may have not been the victim of our one upset this week. He lost 7-4-1 to Alex and Zach.
Great segue. I will say it certainly makes me feel better about losing to Alex and Zach, but I'm telling you, this is a quality team that you all are sleeping on. But yeah, Ruthvik this week offensively was abysmal. I mean, 6 home runs, 29 ribbies, uh, not good. 8 doubles, 328 OBP. Like the 6 steals was fine, but not much else. Pitching wise, he had a very Ruthvik week, right? 6 quality starts, 5 saves, 77 strikeouts, 3.25 ERA, 124 WHIP. I mean, both solid. Maybe the WHIP's a little high, but Alex is a very good pitching team in his own right. 2.65 ERA, 114 WHIP. Was able to get 2 holds. So what Alex kind of lacked in the quantity, he was able to make up for in the quality. And while he didn't have a great offensive week by any stretch as well, he was able to edge Ruthvik in runs, doubles, homers, and ribbies, and he was able to win 7-4-1. They're now 1-1-1 with a very good tie against me and a win over Ruthvik. They're now 1-0-1 against playoff teams, and I'm pretty sure they lost to Yuki week 1. So I don't get it, but um, not a bad start, all things considered.
Yeah, no, it's been an odd start to the season. They definitely pitched really well in the ratios. Despite last week having that big Class A week, this week they did not get a single save, but the ERA and WHIP were really great. Um, Ian Hamilton pitched 4 shutout innings and got 2 holds, both of their holds. Yeah, I agree. The hitting wise side of things wasn't that great, although had a good week for Wyatt Langford. Good week um, for Anthony Volpe. Matchup MVP, there wasn't any standout pitcher, so I'm going to give it to Josh Naylor, who homered 3 times with a 577 on base percentage. He kind of killed it this week. Also walked 6 times. Ruthvik just kind of had a rough week from most of his bats. Michael Garcia is now hitting 194 on the season, um, and Jackson Churio is off to a rough start to his big league career as well. So there's just kind of the same concerns about his bats as always, even if it is different guys.
Yeah, I think he's gonna have better hitting weeks ahead. There's a lot of guys he has that are slumping. Nico Horner is also slumping. Rafael Devers barely played. He's banged up. Andres Jimenez didn't have a great week. Kyber Ruiz is banged up. Anthony Santander has been in a bit of a slump. Tyler O'Neill hit 2 home runs, but didn't really do anything else. So, Bo Bichette didn't play particularly well. So yeah, I think his offense is better than it has been in previous years. Certainly from a depth perspective, but just one of those weeks. And I personally think for me, that's why when I mentioned earlier, I think the 3 through 5 race is kind of you and Erik and Andrew. I don't think Ruthvik's quite part of that tier yet for me.
No, and he might be at some point. But yeah, yeah, this is not really the matchup type of matchup that inspires a lot of confidence in this team.
Exactly that, and that with the combination of the track record kind of does that for me. But um, yeah, anything else you'd like to say about this matchup?
No, I think that's it. Three to go. Where do we
There's
want to go
one that
next?
was almost an upset, and I think that's where I'd like to turn my attention to next. Um, I feel like we kind of fall into the same cycle of talking about the same teams first and the same teams last. I want to break this a little bit. For most of the week, it looked like Daniel and Matt were going to upset Yuki. And all of a sudden, like at the end of the day on Sunday, Yuki just narrowly pulled ahead. Yuki won 6-5 to 1. This despite an 8.10 ERA and a 198 whip. At one point, those numbers were like a 10 ERA and a whip into twos. He broke the whip anti-record and narrowly did not beat the ERA anti-record, thankfully for him. But there was something cool about the ERA and whip records that is no longer applicable. And you figure this one out. Do you want to kind of reveal what that was?
Yeah, so Connor until this week had both the ERA and whip records and the ERA and whip anti records. But now he no longer has the whip anti record, so he only holds three of the four.
Yeah, Connor also owns a share of the strikeout anti-record too. So just kind of crazy how his pitching has gone here. But yeah, so Yuki does win 6-5 to 1. Yuki is now 2-1 on the season. Yuki has a better record than you and me and Erik. How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Definitely amazing the way he battled back from that disastrous Hunter Brown start. I mean, 9 earned runs in 2/3 of an inning. I am not sure I've seen a start that bad before.
Well, not only that, and then it was like Dean Kramer had a bad start for him, and JP France had a bad start. If you just take out the JP France and the Hunter Brown starts, like that's 17 runs between 4 and 2/3 innings of Astros pitching this week that just got absolutely demolished.
God, yeah, that is rough. His hitting was a little better. Not in the on base category. But um, he stole 8 bases. Um, just did enough to win, I guess. Matchup, uh, some of the top hitters. Decent week from Mason Wynn. He got 7 ribbies from Lourdes Gurriel, despite a low on base percentage. Um, Trying to pick a matchup MVP, I guess Isaac Paredes was the best of the bunch. He hit 2 homers, hit a double. Maybe Austin Riley, but I'll give it to Paredes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a gross week to pick a matchup MVP. It's such a weird matchup, but I mean, good for Yuki to pull it out. I think Daniel, Matt, and Yuki did not play all that differently from each other. Um, you know, nice
Except
to
for like the literal almost double ERA that Yuki had.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Other than that, but good to see Daniel and Matt pick up some saves and holds. They've been doing a little bit of streaming there. That's kind of worked out nicely. Although I think they need to get rid of Tanner Scott if they haven't already. But yeah, it's we all know what they kind of signed up for with this rebuild. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this matchup unless there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, they're getting a little bit from their pitching. Graham Ashcraft pitched well today. Not as well against Milwaukee, but that's just kind of, how the Reds do against Milwaukee. He's made good starts in 2 out of his 3 appearances.
That Milwaukee team is swinging the bat like crazy. Like they look like they want to win this division.
Well, there's 4 teams that look like they want to win the division, and none of them are the Cardinals.
Very true.
Um,
Cardinals are ready for that retirement, huh?
yeah, there's yeah, 4 of the 5 teams are 600 or better winning percentage.
Cam.
Yeah. Um, all right, moving on. Let's talk about Andrew versus EBO next. Andrew moves to 3-0. Another great week for him. Some of the numbers weren't there. He only had 1 save. He only hit 9 homers. But I mean, he scored a lot of runs, and the pitching looked great this week. And he is now 3-0.
3-0 with 3 big wins too. He's beaten you, right? He's beaten Jake, and he's beaten EBO. I mean, that's 3 of the top 7 teams in our power rankings. Like, is this uh is this a breakout here? Like, what are we thinking about this team here? Is this team ready to take the next step? Are we looking at them as a team potentially to get a bye? Like what do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, he, if we were just kind of doing a totally blind power rankings based on nothing but this year, Andrew would be number 1, just based on how he's performed, which is kind of crazy to think, but he, uh, he dominated me, and he had a big win over Jake, and now he's got an EBO win over, in his pocket, and that's not as easy of a thing to do as it was in past years because EBO can pitch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for this team. And I thought EBO performed relatively well too. The quality starts were not there, but the saves were nice. The ratios are certainly there. 287 ERA, 118 WHIP. And you could argue they out hit Andrew, 12 homers, 53 ribbies, 19 doubles, right? They kind of split the offensive categories here. I don't think it was the sexiest week for either team in any category in particular, but a hard fought week, and Andrew did enough here certainly to pull out a nice victory. Any players you'd like to highlight in particular?
Yeah, I guess looking at his bats, good week for Jonah Heim, who drove in 7 runs. Good week for Bobby Witt Jr., who scored 10 times, stole a base also, hit a couple homers.
He's got to be the early MVP favorite.
He's, man, off to a great start this season. Slugging 710. On the pitching side, um, not a lot. I don't think he had any 2-star pitchers this week, but a great single start from Ranger Suarez, great single start from Reed Detmers, great start from John Gray, even though he didn't go 7 or didn't go 6. Pretty good start for Chris Bassett. Um, Tempted to give it to Suarez, although Bobby Witt Jr. scoring 10 runs, I think, puts him over the top.
It's got to be Witt. Yeah, I mean he's on another planet right now. Well deserved by Witt. I will be shocked if he does not win the MVP this year in the AL. At least
Yeah,
early.
that is early, but
2-man race between Bobby Witt Jr. and Colton Cowser.
you had Juan Soto in there, then maybe.
Uh, I don't really care about Juan Soto.
But yeah, great week for some of Andrew's guys, and then yeah, just a shout out on EBO's side. Good start for Rodon. Mackenzie Gore struck out 11 in just 5 innings, which is insane. Um, and yeah, good week for Kimbrel out of the bullpen also.
Yeah, no, good for EBO, especially with some of the pitching injuries that they have. We talked about them losing Bieber and Yuri Perez yet?
I think we've kind of talked in general about the pitchers getting hurt, but I don't think we've talked about how it affects them.
Yeah, I think, as we're kind of talking about some of these playoff teams here, and kind of their start, I think we certainly think EBO is in that playoff mix. I mean, they're certainly looking to add pitching now. Zane has made that abundantly clear after they were clearing out a bit of pitching. towards the end of the offseason because I think they thought they had some room to move some. I know they moved Bryce Miller, they moved Joe Ryan. And all of a sudden now, and in fact, when they traded Bryce Miller, they willingly took on an injured pitcher in Sandy Alcantara because they thought they had some of that depth. Now they're kind of trending in the opposite direction here. They need some of that pitching depth. Um, with Bieber and Perez gone. I know Yamamoto and Imanaga have been huge additions for them, and it's certainly been nice for them to kind of be able to promote and demote them in the early part of the season to get a little more flexibility. I do wonder if that is cutting into some of their ad drops a bit much. They did exhaust those ad drops early in the week. But yeah, I think if they really want to compete this year, probably need to add another starting pitcher or two, and whether it's on the cheap side just to kind of compete, or if they kind of want to go and see if they can turn some of their assets into some longer term pitching. They certainly have the minor league and draft pick assets to go out and get pretty much any pitcher that they want. So I'll be curious to see how they plug those holes.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm looking to maybe in the next couple of weeks get a pitcher or two lighter so they could I'd certainly take some uh I'd certainly listen on offers from them. Yeah, they're gonna need some pitchers.
Yeah, they know where Kenta Maeda is if they want him. It's an open offer scene if you're listening to this, but um, yeah, I agree. Anything else you'd like to say about this matchup? Are we ready to move on to our last matchup?
No, let's do it. Anthony is 3-0 with a win over Connor, an 8-3-1 win. Not the most impressed with how his team played this week. But yeah, 3-0 is 3-0.
Yeah, yeah, 3-0 is 3-0, and that's with a win over me. Okay, so wins over Daniel, Matt, and Connor. So there is kind of a real test next week. They play Andrew in kind of a battle of 3-0s here. I might be previewing their matchup to watch or one of them here. So first full week matchup against a projected playoff team. They did play me in a sub week. So this will be kind of an interesting test to see if Anthony has some staying power. He has certainly kind of built a nice start here that is going to give him a little bit of leeway into maybe competing for one of those last playoff spots. And I do think there's a lot to like about some of the stuff that Anthony has done so far. But yeah, you're right. Maybe not his best week here, but was able to pick up a win kind of against a weaker opponent. Nice to see Connor make a couple moves during the week. Jared Jones, although Connor picked him up the day after his start, really looks like he's breaking out in a huge way. I know that Connor could certainly, use some young pitching. He, traded away Dylan Cease, Tristan McKenzie's kind of struggling, Kopech's no longer a starter. So Jones could kind of be maybe the first part of a rotation that's rebuilding. But I know he's got some other interesting pieces as well. And kind of like Daniel Matt, he's right there in the middle of a rebuild.
Yeah, no, certainly. But yeah, looking at Anthony's team, he had a not a lot of stand-up performers. Ryan Jeffers had a good week. Mike Trout had a really solid week. 370 on base, had a couple of homers. Drove in 4 runs, which he's finally broken out of that uh 5 homers and 5 RBI uh for the season that he was at for a while. The pitching side, he had some. It was just kind of a week of contrast there. He had some really great performances, like from Bailey Ober and Freddie Peralta and um, and Christian Javier, and he had some really terrible performances from Andrew Heaney and Reese Olson and Garrett Crochet. Well, Crochet had 10 Ks, but in 4 2/3 innings, but also just kind of, the Reds were a good hitting team, and they got to him. I think I'm gonna give Ober the matchup MVP though, because he pitched 11 innings and only allowed 1 earned run, and just 6 hits and a walk or a couple walks. Great week for Bailey Ober, who had a disastrous first start of the season against the Royals, but pitched well against the Dodgers and then got a quality start against the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm a big Ober guy. I think anybody who kind of jumped off the ship after that first start is kind of crazy. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've his stock's really risen, and good for Anthony. I know you got some offers on him for the offseason, kind of holding tight there and riding it out. But yeah, anything else you would like to say about any of these matchups, or are we ready to talk about our matchup of the week for next week?
Let's do it. And yeah, you mentioned it earlier. It's got to be Anthony versus Andrew, the battle of the two 3-0 teams. Um, kind of different paths to 3-0. Both 3-0 nonetheless, and one of them, unless there's a tie, will be 4-0.
Yeah, that's who would have thought that that would be a remaining 3-0 matchup at the beginning of the year?
True. Yeah, I mean, of all these matchups that we're looking at right now, it probably would have been Jake versus Ruthvik that we'd have thought would have been the 3-0, 3-0. Or maybe uh I think this would have been maybe the probably more likely than EBO versus Alex, and maybe the Drury versus Erik, but I don't know. It's surprising and exciting nonetheless for both of these teams.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think Eric or not Eric, Jake versus Ruthvik is also one I like to shout out here. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup as well. I think Ruthvik to see if he can kind of bounce back after the tough loss to Alex, and Jake to kind of see if his pitching can rebound, if he can beat another quality opponent. A 3-1 start would certainly put some of our concerns to bed. Although it's going to be interesting because Ruthvik was not hitting last week, but the pitching was really good. And for Jake, the hitting's solid, but the rotation just has not been there. So something has to give, I feel like. I feel like that's certainly going to be a close matchup. But let's dive into that, our pick 'em here. And I should have done this before we started recording, especially since we had so much time. That's on me. All right. We both picked Erik to win last week, and we were wrong. Thank God. We both picked Ruthvik to win last week, and we were wrong. Very happy about that. We both picked Andrew to beat EBO. We were right. We both picked Anthony to beat Connor. We were right. We were almost both wrong about Yuki beating Daniel and Matt, but he pulled it out. I picked Jake to win. You picked you and Jake to tie. That means I went 4-2 on the week. You went 3-2-1, which means if I could do math, and I think you fixed your spreadsheet so it no longer does the dates. That's certainly nice. That puts me. Math is hard. 9, 6, and 3. And you are 9, 6, and 3. There you go. Guess you.
Well, I think in cornhole rules, I still go first.
Yeah,
Again,
and we all know we default to cornhole rules on this podcast. So we are a Midwestern podcast at heart. So
we are, even though neither of us are Midwestern, um, we are Midwestern podcast. I think I will rebound against Yuki. I think Erik will rebound against the Drury. I think you are going to beat Connor. So those are the three easier matchups. Although I hesitate calling any matchup with Yuki easy because it's never easy against Yuki. Um, I think Jake will beat Ruthvik. I think Andrew will beat Anthony. And I think EBO versus Alex is the closest matchup of the week on paper. Both of these teams have looked pretty solid to start the year. I think I have faith in EBO though.
all right. I will pick myself to beat Connor. I will pick Erik to beat Daniel and Matt. I'll pick you to beat Yuki, but you're right. There could be some shenanigans in there. I'll pick Jake to beat Ruthvik. As I just kind of mentioned, I think it's going to be kind of close, just kind of based on the trajectory of their hitting and pitching. But I think Jake's going to kind of come out on top there. I think Andrew's going to come out on top on Anthony. I think Andrew's just the better team, even though they started 3-0. And I'm going to pick EVO and Alex and Zach to tie. I think neither team's hitting particularly well to start this season. Like they're fine, but it's nothing special. I think on the pitching side, it's going to kind of be who can like a quality race. Like I don't think either of them are going to put up gaudy quantity numbers, but I think it's going to be a kind of a quality thing. And I think Alex's team is pitching really well. That's going to kind of help there. I don't know. I'm going to call it a tie. Also to be different from you. So there we go.
Yeah, I almost picked that one as a tie, so we could have been very close on.
I think if you would have picked it as a tie, I think I would have picked EVO to be different because I'm confident that EVO is gonna. I'm more confident that EVO is gonna win than it would be Alex and Zach.
No, fair enough. But yes, that is our week 4 preview. I am currently, as we speak, marking the people who chose Spencer Strider as the innings leader, marking them incorrect, which is a sad thing to do. But yeah, so that is week 3 in the books. Excited to talk week 4. Anything else you want to mention before we go?
Yeah, well, one thing you're marking just made me think of, is there any update on the Dynasty belt?
Oh, the Dynasty belt.
We haven't
Good.
talked about that in a hot sec.
Um, let's see. I updated it maybe last week or the week before. I don't remember what the result was. Let's see. So, Andrew took it from Jake in week 2 in their matchup, and he still got it. He's got the Dynasty belt. Congrats, Andrew, on owning the Dynasty belt. Yuki lost 10 straight to end the year with the Dynasty belt. Alex took it, and now I guess Alex beat this week beat Ruthvik. So Ruthvik is the owner of the loser's belt. Congratulations, Ruthvik.
So Jake v. Ruthvik next week could be a transfer to loser's belt to the league champion.
Very interesting. I noticed Jake still has Bo Bichette as his team's logo. I might want to change that soon. But yeah, yeah, those are the winners and losers belts.
That is fun. All right. I don't think there's anything else. Another great week of baseball, and cannot wait to record same time next week.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next week.
This podcast is good.